Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for another Rainbow Press and Comics DC Comics Milestones review, and this time I will be covering Static Issue 2. So, as you know, I really like to rate certain things within the story, including the cover. So starting off directly with the cover, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside the story? You bloody bet it does. To which I gave this cover a rating of 7 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the internal art, to which I'll show some art around the beginning, middle and the end. Now this is some art around the beginning, to which we see Virgil, who is Static, and Jean, who's basically one of his villains that works with fire. Some interesting colour usage, I must admit, for this story, as you can see on both pages. Time to move to the middle. As we move to the middle of the story, we get Virgil back at school with one of his friends. And time to move towards the end. And last but not least, the art towards the end. If I want to say one thing, I really did like the art for this story. And because of it, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. In other words, I gave it something a little bit more than the cover. But what about the actual story itself? Alright, moving into the story. As you already know, there are some things that I personally enjoy in any storytelling that I happen to read or watch. And that is, moving into first things first, does this cover any comic references to any previous comics? Even maybe a reference to any of the earliest issues of Static or Static Shock? It doesn't, but let's move on to the next thing. Does it give us any indication as to something that happens inside the story of what happening or when things are happening throughout the time of day? It does, but it's a very lazy way of how it's been done. To be honest, it's super fucking lazy. And it's a good thing that this isn't on the Fool's Gold list. For the moment, that is. And it records it down as hours later. And that's about the only reference. Though with what happened inside the story, it could have included more. I'm serious, this could have included more. Moving into the location, we of course had the home of Static Shock. We had the school. We had Mr. Metcalf's home. And also the location of Dakota Storage. So in that, it really was good because it brought up something of what is presently beginning to happen within the storyline. Moving into the cast, we had the appearance of Daisy, Jean, Static Shock, Virgil, Sharon made an appearance, Robert Hawkins, his old man, Darius, and of course Mr. Metcalf, to which you learn inside the story that Virgil has been having some discussions with Mr. Metcalf, and has been asked to sort of like come around and visit, especially in relation to like the people with superpowers within this story. One thing I do want to point out is that at the beginning of the story, it really felt like it was missing like a important flashback. And what I mean by an important flashback is when you start to come into the story, when you see the first page, you see that they're, okay, in apartments, but move into the next page, you start to see the house burning, but it's not really in full depth. You do get a bit of a spiel that happens there, but they could have done a better job in presenting it, and you probably wouldn't have had to use as much spiel, but instead by showing pictures, like some pictures without words to show what happened to the house. And that would have been enough, I think, for the reader of this comic to understand what had gone down, which led to the house being burnt. And you could have brought any of the additional dialogue later. To which this now leads to the story rating. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Well, until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.